The Joint Interim Standing Committee on Government Affairs will come to order. Madam Secretary, if you could please call the roll.
Senator Krasner? Senator Neal?
Here.
Assemblymember Cole? Assemblymember Considine?
Present.
Assemblymember Flanagan? Assemblymember Gurr?
Here.
Assemblymember Wynn? And Chair Flores.
Present. Please let the record reflect we have 7 members present. We do have a quorum. Please mark Assemblymember Wynn as absent excused, and should he join us at a later time, please mark him as present. Good afternoon, everybody, to our very exciting Committee on Government Affairs. I see the excitement in everybody's face. I appreciate that enthusiasm. We do have a relatively light schedule for today. However, because every agenda moving forward just feels like it will be very voluminous, we didn't want to lose the opportunity to continue the discussion for today. We'll follow the agenda as it appears. And at this time, we'd like to open it up for public comment. Anybody in Carson City or Las Vegas wishing to join us for public comment, if you could please make yourself available to join us at one of the 3 seats. Just for clarity, we ask that you refrain your comments to 2 minutes. Should you need more time, please email the committee. We can upload it and it will become part of the record. Good afternoon, sir, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Cyrus Sojati, Cyrus Hojjaty. I'd like to talk about AB 96 and the urban heat island effect. It's okay, which is a bill that I support. Yes, trees, water, buildings, all that stuff definitely matters. But one thing needs to be talked about more is parking. We have a lot of empty parking spots. Go outside, it's pretty shocking, kind of depressing. And this is largely because we have codes, especially at a land use level, that demand parking minimums, saying that, for an example, if you have a business, you need to provide 7, 8 parking spaces. There has been some recent uptrends. The city of Henderson has wound down their parking requirements around the Water Street district, which also helped reduce my costs and other benefits as well. But I think we still have a lot more to go. Last month, this area hit a record high temperature of 97 degrees. Very frightening, like Twilight Zone. I believe urban heat island effect has an effect of that at least 2-3 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's take a look at other states that have mitigated. Look at North Carolina. In 2025, in the legislative session, they introduced a parking reform bill, HB 369. Hopefully I'll be able to email you this bill. It got unanimous support. So hopefully we can look at the bill, apply it, get it forward, and save our lives. I believe it's up to builders and consumers as how many parking spaces that they should be able to provide. And I believe this is the main source of our urban heat island effect. This metro area perhaps is one of the most paved area per person in any metropolitan area in the United States because we are on average the newest person. To be fair, street design does play a role, arterial roads, and the La Madre plan by the city is a step forward as well. And also look into building construction. We have adobe houses more than 500 years ago. They do reduce the urban heat island effect. Arizona, New Mexico, before the Spanish came here. Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us. I know you may have had some additional remarks. Please do send those in and we'll make sure that they get uploaded. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you. Anybody else wishing to join us either in Carson City or Las Vegas? Seeing none, we will go to those wishing to join us over the phone.
Chair, the public line is open and working. We have no callers at this time.
Thank you. For those of you who did not get an opportunity to join us over the phone, please know that we will be having a second round of public comment at the end of today's agenda. Please make sure that you join us then. We'll be moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is a discussion on implementation of heat mitigation provisions. I wanted to thank our folk from Southern Nevada for joining us today. We did also invite our Northern Nevada partners. However, they indicated that they needed some additional time. We expect them to be here in the next meeting, but we did want to offer them that courtesy of saying, if you need some additional time, you can do it. Our jurisdictions in Southern Nevada are equally working as hard, and they stepped up to the plate. So I do want to say thank you to them and acknowledge the fact that they are here today and our other partners are not. But they'll be here for the next meeting, and we do hope to have a conversation with them then. With that, we would go ahead and open the discussion. We'll have some representatives from Clark County, if you could please come forward. And again, thank you for joining us. Good afternoon, gentlemen, whenever you're ready.
Afternoon. Chair Flores, Vice Chair Considine. For the record, Todd Mason, M-A-S-O-N with Clark County. We appreciate the opportunity this afternoon. To my right, Mr. Martin Geese, a planning manager in our comprehensive planning department at Clark County, and we'll allow our colleagues to introduce themselves from the cities as we move along here. Just a few brief remarks from Clark County before we move forward. I think we see the implementation of Assembly Bill 96 from the 25 session as another good example of regional collaboration, specifically in looking at the efforts that were ongoing around environment and sustainability among certainly ourselves at the direction of our commissioners, and then also the municipalities at their council's direction. This is clearly a priority for local governments, and that work continues. Specific to Assembly Bill 96, though, there has been a work group established around the implementation, which, of course, all our partners that are here today are a part of, and as well as representatives from other departments, such as Parks and Recreation and others that you'll hear from today, and some more specifics about that. We feel that in addition to the work that has gone into revisions around master plans, the work that continues within Clark County and other jurisdictions, it's important to address some elements for our part, and I know our colleagues will address this as well, elements that were already in master plans and that we're moving toward the ultimate goals that AB 96 addressed, which is the mitigation of the urban heat island effect and protecting those vulnerable to extreme heat. Specifically, and I'll just briefly go over those cool building practices, policies that we have in place that actually address those mitigation efforts when we have new development, shade over paved surfaces whenever possible. Of course, drought tolerant landscaping has been a part of the county's policy within its master plan for some time, and then continuing to use items in any new development that we would refer to as green infrastructure, rain gardens, permeable pavers, and the like. As I mentioned, there's still work to do around implementation. Continue to work hard on that, and just the final additions that we feel are necessary to the county's master plan, which we intend to have complete this summer, and we'll work hard to have those completed prior to the July 1 deadline. Those include an expansion policies related to cooling spaces and public access to drinking water, which of course are mentioned in the legislation. In addition to that, just wanted to mention two things that fall outside of the realm of planning, but are just as vital to mitigating the urban heat island effect and, as I said, providing relief whenever possible to those that are most vulnerable to extreme heat. The Community Canopy Project, which some of you may have read about, that has been an ongoing project managed by our Environment and Sustainability Department in partnership with the Arbor Day Foundation and Nevada Plants under the State Forestry Division. That, in fact, just opened again. Its spring session opened again this past Monday, the 30th, with the goal of providing free trees. Ultimately, we hope to give away more than 6,800 trees to residents in Clark County. That started with residents in 12 specific zip codes, which were identified through the Desert Research Institute's heat mapping project that were most vulnerable. And residents in those zip codes were able to reserve 2 trees. And then, as I mentioned on Monday, the 30th, we opened that up to all residents in Clark County. Brought some information just on that so that if you like, you could distribute that onto your constituents. We're doing everything that we can to get the word out on that program because we feel it's going to be very successful in providing an opportunity for residents to plant in their own yards, provide shade for them as individuals, obviously, but also to their homes. And then finally, briefly mention, I know probably all of you on the committee are aware of the cooling stations, which were first activated, activated for the first time this year, March 19th during that initial heat wave. That's a partnership with multiple municipalities, agencies, and providing those public cooling stations is, again, a critical part of helping to mitigate and assisting those who are most vulnerable to extreme heat. I will let my other colleagues come to the table and we can certainly come back up and be available for any questions. Thank you again, Mr. Chair.
You want to do? I think it might be easiest if maybe we can ask some questions now. Do you have some questions now, Senator Neal? And maybe we can take it in that kind of order. Although I suspect that there may be questions at the very end where different folk from different jurisdictions may want to come up, but there may be some now. Please, Senator Neal.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you for the presentation. Do you have actual data for the Community Canopy Project that overlays the 12 zip codes and where the first 4,500 trees have been planted, and also data that shows how many of the 4,500 trees are still living?
Mr. Chairman, and to Senator Neal, thank you for the question. Todd Mason for the record.
And please do go direct. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Todd Mason with Clark County. So I will be glad to go back and seek that data out. I do not have that data where specifically those trees were planted or specifically which of those trees are still living from that first 4,500. But I'd be happy to seek that out and get it back to the committee.
Thank you for that, because I couldn't find it anywhere on the website, right? There's a lot of flyers, there's links to the Southern Nevada Water Authority, but I can't find the specific, here was the result, and here is the impact that actually occurred because of this directed activity.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I think maybe following up on Senator Neal's point, I think the committee in the past, when engaging in these conversations, there was a lot of curiosity around the follow-up plan after we plant a tree, just to ensure that there's an actual maintenance kind of component to it, because we were very concerned about that. I know it's been a conversation we've been having now for a few years when we talk about this. And so I asked that question or make that point just in general so that other jurisdictions, as you're coming up and engaging in that, if you can maybe touch a little bit on that, please.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair Flores. For the record, Todd Mason with Clark County. So I can speak to at least well, let me separate into two things. Those trees, and as part of this canopy project, which is focused on individual residents, there, as I say, I'll go back and attempt to get that data for you on what has been planted. I would say the entire point of those distributions, and the reason we brought in partners from Arbor Day Foundation, and also, as I mentioned, from Nevada Plants, was to ensure that residents who are picking up those trees have information that they need to ensure that they have successful planting and they know how to care for those drought tolerant trees. Even though they are drought tolerant, there are of course steps that they have to follow. So the ultimate goal, of course, is that they do that successfully and that those trees thrive. But as I say, I will be glad to go back and get any specific data we can for the committee.
Thank you. And I'll go back to Senator Neal in a second, but we do have a question from Assemblymember Flanagan, please. Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mason. You just mentioned that it's for individual family homes. Are we completely restricted to that? And I ask because a lot of times the heat mitigation issues are more dominant in dense areas or disadvantaged communities where you see more apartment and affordable housing. And so you don't see, there isn't as much consideration given to landscaping. And some of them are older, like older apartment complexes where you just have the dirt. So are we just not able, or can we have some future conversations about partnerships like that, do you know, to get more into those?
1:27 p.m.
Sorry, Siri. Into those densely populated areas to get more trees and things like that. Thank you.
Assemblymember Flanagan, thank you for the question. Again, Todd Mason for the record with Clark County. The answer to your question, twofold. First, the tree giveaways are focused first and foremost on residents who may have their own property. However, that does not preclude a resident who may be in multifamily housing from reserving a tree, as it would be incumbent upon that individual to work that out with property management or landlord, what have you. So certainly not precluded from doing so, and we don't necessarily make that distinction. But as I say, in order to ensure that there's a success, that they have success with these plants, to your point, I believe we can continue to have those discussions with landlords, those that operate, own or manage multifamily housing, to work on that type of landscaping. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, no. Okay.
I think, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mason. If we can continue those conversations and find the creative ways to engage around the issue,
Yes,
that would be appreciated. So whatever I can do.
And thank you. And we'll go next to we'll go back to Senator Neal.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to add to my data request. So outside of the tree canopy, I guess, plan where individual residents are then reserving a tree, I specifically want to hone in on the ones that are the zip codes where we know that it is a true urban heat island. Mm-hmm. And then also I want data on beyond the tree canopy where there is a coordination between what RTC put out as the heat map in 2022 that shows that there's coordinated tree planting in other urban spaces that may not be residential, where folks are walking, where we have not only a walkability plan, right? Folks to and from bus stops, areas where there has been historical, I guess, wider land, like in 89115, some of the other zip codes where we know for a fact there is not a lot of, I mean, it kind of plays on what Assemblywoman Flanagan was saying, where there's not a lot of housing, but other apartments, but these are walkable spaces that have already been identified as high heat areas, areas where folks have to use transit to get to and from work, home, school, and where we've actually planted trees in order to reduce any kind of heat mitigation for those residents that are in Clark County. Thank you, Chair.
For the record, Todd Mason of Clark County, Senator Neal would be glad to get that information for you. And I believe, I don't want to speak for them, but I believe some of our colleagues will speak to that as well. Maybe not that specific zip code, but to your broader question, but I will be certain to follow up with the committee.
And thank you. Members, any additional questions for Clark County? I don't see anybody on Zoom raising their hand and or with questions. Thank you again. And next we'll invite our folk from the city of Las Vegas. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Joint Interim Committee, Marco Vallada, City of Las Vegas, Department of Community Development for the record. As far as with respect to Assembly Bill 96, the city has been in support of this effort as well as the prior effort that took place in the 2023 legislative session, Senate Bill 169. We have had a long history of looking at urban forestry from multiple lenses, and really it's with respect to that urban heat island effect that was alluded to. We have known that it's been impacting the Las Vegas Valley at large, and we have seen gradual increases in daytime and nighttime temperatures over time. And it is incumbent upon us as a municipality to do those implementation measures in a coordinated fashion that address the overall heat itself, as well as the built environment and the impacts to the residents and businesses that are within our jurisdiction. We've been in coordination with a number of agencies, including those that are here today, as well as academic institutions, Desert Research Institute, the Southern Nevada Health District, Southern Nevada Water Authority, Regional Transportation Commission, as well as across the state, City of Reno, City of Washoe County, and the University of Nevada, Reno, where they have done a similar urban heat mapping project for Washoe County. With respect to our 2050 master plan, which was adopted in 2021, we knew at that time that heat was going to be something that we needed to address from a hazard standpoint. That is something in NRS 278 for master plans that you address hazards. And we took a specific look at how we can use urban heat, how we can address the urban heat island effect with mitigation measures, but we did recognize that we needed to go beyond that, and that was ultimately why we got what we got with Assembly Bill 96. There are more things that we need to take a look at, with such as public cooling spaces, cool building practices, drinking water, and any other mitigation measure that might come out of it, such as programmatic activities, opening and activating cooling stations in coordination with the National Weather Service, or with a heat office, which we don't have, but other municipalities in other states have done, such as Tempe and Phoenix. Those might be the things that that could ultimately move the dial, if you will, to get heat mitigated as temperatures continue to show their increases. So, with respect to what we have done at the city so far, we have addressed urban forestry in a resolution that was adopted in the middle of the legislation that was passed in 2023 and 2025, and then we took it a step further and put together a full urban forestry management plan to address shading in particular. We currently have a general plan amendment that is going to be heard in our June cycle for our planning commission and our city council that will address some of the other items that we haven't gotten to yet that require a little bit more in-depth looks, such as public drinking water, where doing an inventory of our facilities where we can dispense or where we can provide drinking water. Public cooling spaces, what are those facilities that can be activated on high heat days that are above 100 or 105 degrees Fahrenheit? And then additional information on cool building practices, things like insulation, HVAC, how does that get implemented in the residential and the commercial setting, so on and so forth. The most tangible implementation activity that we do have is that urban forestry management plan, which was adopted by the City Council in December 2025. And we did a citywide look at our urban forestry assets. We have more than 40,000 trees that were already planted, and we took additional inventory of public rights-of-way, parks, and other locations where trees could go in or are in or need to be replaced due to age, pests, diseases, things to that effect. Looked at the mapping in terms of shade canopy cover, tree attributes ranging from the size of the tree, the health of the tree, the condition of the tree. It's very robust, and we keep it in a database called Tree Keeper that is available online for the public to take a look at. And then we also get into a lot of other implementation measures that specifically address the heating and shading. What can we do to increase our tree canopy to hit our 2050 master plan goal of planting 60,000 trees by 2050? And up to this point, 4,000 additional trees have been planted in the public setting, and we have a number of other programs that we're working on right now that will get more trees planted on private property, whether that's residential or commercial. Right now in our urbanized area, our tree canopy is roughly 9% within our entire jurisdiction, including areas that have not been developed. It's closer to 6%. And we're specifically looking at the older parts of town, wards 1, 3, and 5, immediately around downtown Las Vegas, where the tree canopy is older and where the urban heat island effect is most pronounced. And we know that from our mapping and a lot of our geographic information systems work. Basically, the intersection of Eastern Avenue and Bonanza Road is ground zero for where the urban heat island effect is most pronounced, as well as where you have a convergence of demographic and socioeconomic factors that impact the people the most. So at this time, we have a wide range of measures that we can look at with respect to time, cost, and ease of implementation that are recommended within that urban forestry master plan. Some of them that we're working on right now. We do have an amendment to our Title 19 municipal code that is going to be going in our May cycle that precedes that general plan amendment that I had mentioned that looks at increasing standards for tree planting, as well as an amendment to Las Vegas Municipal Code Title 13 that addresses a number of urban forestry standards, things that have been out of date since the 1950s. That is a part of that effort. We are doing tree plantings this month as a part of Earth Month. We have a number of them that are happening in conjunction with Arbor Day, and a lot of work that we've done with local nonprofits, some of them that have been mentioned already, but also Impact NV, which has been doing tree plantings across the community. And we have worked with them extensively on tree plantings at parks. Most recently, coming up, we have a tree planting at Kellogg Zaire Park, and we'll have another one this month at Rainbow Family Park in Western Las Vegas, and then a number that will be happening in and around downtown Las Vegas and East Las Vegas, where we've done tree plantings in the past. We have a community forestry grant similar to Clark County's efforts. We have a tree bait that we've been doing where we offer a free tree to qualified zip codes. This is through a U.S. Department of Agriculture grant through the Forest Service. So areas that are impacted the most by the urban heat island effect were qualified. And again, based on socioeconomic and demographic factors, we looked at East Las Vegas, downtown Las Vegas, those zip codes, single family residential households that are there qualify for a free tree. And we've had more than 300 applicants that have so far applied and have had a tree put in by our contractor, Par 3. We have another 200 that are in process right now that we will be trying to get planted before Memorial Day. We take a break during the summer months to allow for the heat to get by and to make sure that we have tree survival during that time period, and then pick back up again for the fall, winter, and then we'll do the same cycle again after that, and then monitor the tree's health and the progress over the next couple of years through the grant period. We have a number of other capital improvement projects that are active right now, trees that are a part of the public realm, a part of complete streets improvements, such as Maryland Parkway, where a Regional Transportation Commission project is going on to construct bus rapid transit. We have tree-lined streets as a part of that. Many of our streets that we do improvements on include trees and landscaping, and many of the development agreements that we have in suburban parts of the city do require trees as a part of their thoroughfares. So with that, if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you for the presentation. Members, any questions? We'll start off with Senator Neal.
Thank you, Chair. So I was looking at the information that you presented, and my first question is, it looks like the Urban Forest Initiative in the city of Las Vegas started in 2008, and then there was a goal up to 2035 to do 10% of that canopy. Before this resolution that then was, I call it a re-up, where that resolution then was presented and signed in 2022 under the wife of Oscar Goodman. So what I'm trying to understand is how much work was done from 2008 to this re-up in 2022 when there was an urban forest initiative?
Certainly. To the chair, you, Senator Neal.
And please do go direct.
Yes. So as part of that effort, we did have tree plantings that took place along the way. We are a Tree City USA. That is a recognition, but I think the efforts were, as you said, were re-ups because we didn't have a formal dedicated position that was specific. We now have an urban forester that was hired in that time period. And then another one after that that basically has been dedicated to just the trees within the city of Las Vegas itself. So there were tree plantings that were happening year over year from that 2008 resolution that you referenced. But again, I think part of it is technology, part of it is resources, being able to see what that progress is. We needed to do that reset to see where we're actually at. And because of that, we decided, we need to start from where we are now. We need to have an urban forestry management plan. We need to take a look at our entire inventory, which we have now done and concluded. And we know from essentially that the adoption of the 2050 master plan in 2021, what our benchmark is and how many trees that we've been adding in the public realm, as well as for private property through site development reviews for residential and commercial property.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. So I was looking at the tree map, tree keeper. So in the tree keeper system, it's a similar question that I had to the county. Are you tracking whether or not they're, the lifespan of the tree itself that you planted? So, because you can see what kind of tree was planted, and you can see that it's a very slim corridor that you guys have focused on according to this map. But what is there, do you have the data on the lifespan of the trees that you have planted?
Marco Vallata, for the record, through the chair to you, Senator Neal. Yes, that is one of the attributes that we have, and we have more granulated, fine-tuned data for the other ones. I mean, some of them we just don't know the exact dates that were planted, probably the oldest ones. We can determine some based on site development reviews from a long time ago, but for most of the ones that were done moving forward, yes, we have an idea of when the tree was planted, therefore the age, and that's something that we'll continue to track and continue to fine tune as the years go on.
Follow, please.
Thank you. So if you could provide the granulated data, and also, is this an application that is shared with the other cities, or are you the only one that uses it?
Mark Ovalata, for the record, this is something that we have in-house, but we can definitely make that available to anybody who wants it.
But no other city has asked you about your tree keeper application?
I believe we have coordinated with it. I believe we've done so with North Las Vegas, and I think we've made mention of it with Henderson and the county. But as far as the actual specifics and the behind the scenes on it, I think just in a general sense, we made it known that we do it, and that's what we work with.
When did you have that conversation with North Las Vegas about the tree keeper app?
Marco Villa, for the record, I believe it's been over the years, at least since we had a contract with Davie Resource Group, who did our urban forestry management plan, and as a part of that process, I think that's when we had those meetings with the other jurisdiction. The representatives from Davie did meet with stakeholders across the valley.
But you're not aware if they adopted the tree keeper app or not?
I don't believe so, no.
How much did it cost?
The entire contract for this urban forestry management plan, which is inclusive of the inventory and the actual the inventory in the plan was about $400,000 and includes additional deliverables on top of that. As far as the actual inventory components, you have to find it.
Yeah, I just want to know the app itself.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Members, any additional questions? I don't see any in Las Vegas. How about our folk joining us on Zoom? I don't see you, but I suspect that we don't have any questions for you at this time. Thank you again for joining us. And we'll invite you to sit back. There may be some questions a bit later. Next, we'd like to invite our folk from the city of Henderson. Good afternoon. Welcome. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Flores and members of the committee. My name is Tori Jackson, and I'm the city's Sustainability and Climate Manager, and I'm here today with Anna Marie Smith. She is a principal planner and the project manager of our Henderson Strong Comprehensive Update. Today, we're going to give you a brief overview of the timeline of the Henderson Comprehensive Plan update and discuss the existing and proposed heat mitigation measures in our plan. We will also talk briefly about heat mitigation in some of our other long-range plans and provide some examples of our recent implementation projects and initiatives to date. So I'll pass it over to my colleague here, Anna.
Thank you, Tori. Again, I am Anna Marie Smith for the record. Henderson Strong is the citywide planning document that communicates the vision, long-term goals, and objectives that guide the physical development and orderly management of growth of the city for the next 20 years. The city adopted the Henderson Strong Comprehensive Plan in July 2017. Built on a strong foundation of research and community engagement, Henderson Strong capitalizes on the city's strengths and addresses weaknesses to ensure we remain a premier community. The process was driven by extensive community outreach that drew from city input into the Southern Nevada Strong Regional Plan, coupled with in-depth resident and stakeholder engagement in Henderson. An overall update to the Henderson Strong Comprehensive Plan is currently in progress in response to changes within our community and in alignment with best planning practices. Staff will incorporate the requirements of AB 96 as a part of this larger update, with a draft expected in summer 2026 and potential adoption later this year. The update to the comprehensive plan consists of 3 phases, with each phase featuring robust community engagement to ensure we are capturing our community's values and top priorities. We are currently in the 3rd phase of this update, with a full draft of the plan nearing completion, public open houses to review the concepts presented in the plan, and potential adoption on the horizon. To provide a bit of context to the regional efforts as previously described by our colleagues, in response to the passage of AB 96, the All in Clark County Regional Climate Collaborative convened a working group of local planning staff from each jurisdiction to coordinate a regional approach to ensure consistent integration of heat mitigation measures in local planning efforts. Planning staff from the City of Henderson have been active participants in this regional effort since the working group's inception in summer 2025. An important early outcome of that collaborative effort was an independent assessment of each of the local jurisdictions' master plans to better understand how heat mitigation was being addressed. Within the Henderson-Strong Comprehensive Plan, the urban heat island effect is identified as a key challenge facing the city and is discussed throughout the document through a variety of goals and strategies. As you can see by this graphic on the screen, cool building practices, shade over paved surfaces, and other mitigation measures, as required by the passage of AB 96, were already captured and under active implementation. The Henderson-Strong Comprehensive Plan features three main themes: healthy, livable communities, vibrant, resilient economy, and active, complete transportation. As was mentioned, heat mitigation is discussed throughout the document and in a variety of ways, including encouraging the use of structural shade, in addition to expanding the urban tree canopy coverage. We also explore ways to shape the built environment through building orientation, parking reductions, and shaded walkways. We know that our parks and open space system is a major community asset and continues to serve as essential infrastructure in terms of providing relief for our residents during extreme heat events. Henderson-Strong directly addresses equitable access to these vital community resources, but we know there are still opportunities to enhance our response to extreme heat. AB 96 identifies two strategies not currently addressed in Henderson-Strong: access to public drinking water and public cooling stations. These two strategies have been developed and reviewed with the Henderson-Strong Advisory Group and will be addressed in the larger update to the comprehensive plan. With that, I would like to turn this presentation over to Tori to discuss other avenues we are pursuing and focusing on addressing extreme heat. Tori?
Again, Tori Jackson for the record. In addition to Henderson-Strong's comprehensive plan, the city has many other plans that have been recently adopted or will soon be adopted that address heat mitigation and adaptation. Across plans like the city's Open Space and Trails Plan and the draft All-in Henderson Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, the city emphasizes planting drought-tolerant trees, increasing the urban tree canopy, and adding shade structures to lower the urban heat island effect. The city's transportation and mobility plan and related actions call for shaded streets, transit, trails, corridors, and bus stops to make walking, biking, and transit safer and more comfortable in extreme heat. The age-friendly action plan strategies highlight targeting heat mitigation in underserved areas and for vulnerable populations most at risk for extreme heat. And our draft All-in Henderson Sustainability and Climate Action Plan also includes education campaigns and preparedness resources to help residents understand heat risks and take protective actions before and during extreme heat events. In addition to supporting regional efforts, the City of Henderson continues to implement heat mitigation and adaptation projects and initiatives to reduce the impacts of extreme heat in our community. The Office of Public Response and our Henderson homeless response teams provide assistance during extreme heat events and weather events to our most vulnerable residents, passing out waters, electrolytes, and other supplies to residents experience homelessness. The city works with partners to host tree giveaways and plantings in some of our hottest neighborhoods. The city's also shifted our strategy that we are focused on planting trees in our parks and at our schools, and we are working with partners across the community to get those trees planted in the ground. We've also developed some informational flyers and distribute these each summer as part of a community awareness campaign on heat safety. And finally, Henderson operates a cooling station at the Downtown Senior Center. We can now open it up to any questions that you may have.
Thank you both for being here today. Members, any questions? We'll start with Assemblymember Flanagan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. This is more kind of along the lines of Senator Neal's comment in the previous. It has to do with the heat-related information for people by age. Are you the only municipality that, I mean, I know we all try to educate, but I thought it was very helpful for you to have an age-appropriate mitigation plan to communicate and educate people on, especially as our climate continues to change. And I didn't see an active advertising of that in any other presentations. Do you guys work together across the board to share how this information is communicated from one municipality to another?
Thank you for the question, Assemblymember. Anna Marie Smith for the record. Yes, we actually do have, and we mentioned the Regional Climate Collaborative, and there were efforts prior to the Climate Collaborative being established that helped build what's called the Stay Cool Clark County. And I believe my colleagues from Clark County can maybe answer that a little bit better, but that is a central repository of information that was developed in tandem with the Southern Nevada Health District, Southern Nevada Water Authority, the regional jurisdictions, as a resource for individuals looking for access to things like cooling stations, bus routes, things like that, public libraries. So there is a website out there for individuals to access. Now I know we know individuals that are a little bit on the age-friendly side, if you will, have a tendency to access information differently. So we make sure from the City of Henderson side that this information is available in our senior centers.
Senator Neal. But before we go to you, Senator, please let the record reflect Assemblymember Nguyen is present. Senator Neal, please.
Thank you, Chair. So in your presentation, you mentioned that the Henderson Strong Comprehensive Plan started in 2017, and then you had an amendment to the plan in 2025. So if heat mitigation was always a part of the original plan, what efforts from 2017 to 2025 have you done in the low-income areas in Henderson?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Anna Marie Smith for the record. To kind of start that question, we undertook the update to Henderson Strong Comprehensive Plan in summer 2025. We haven't amended the comprehensive plan to address additional items related to extreme heat. That is going to be part of this larger update that we're pursuing with potential adoption later this summer. But to your point about some of the mitigation activities that we've undertaken in vulnerable communities, I can pass it over to my colleague, Tori Jackson, who spearheaded a tree giveaway in one of our most vulnerable neighborhoods.
Tori Jackson for the record. Yeah, in 2025, we did look at the heat map, the RTC heat map that you mentioned earlier from 2022, and we worked with Nevada Plants to specifically find the neighborhood that had the highest heat vulnerability in all of Henderson. And we did a grassroots effort in terms of marketing the event that we had. We went door to door and handed out flyers instead of posting it on social media and on our website. We made it something that we went to the community and connected with them directly so that those trees would directly benefit that neighborhood specifically. So we gave away 111 trees in our Pittman neighborhood as part of that giveaway. And as Nevada Plants, as you've seen with some of our other jurisdictions that have presented today, we're able to geolocate where those trees go. And more than half of those trees ended up within a half mile of where our tree giveaway was. So it was incredibly successful in terms of making sure that we got those trees planted in the ground where we specifically wanted them to. And it was through that non-traditional and old school way of going back and going door to door and meeting the people where they were.
That's all. Where exactly is the Pittman area?
Tori Jackson for the record. Pittman is located in East Henderson. It is right off of Boulder Highway, north of Lake Mead Parkway, in that general vicinity to the northeast of that intersection.
So down by that Catholic school?
The giveaway that we did was at Wells Park, next to a Boys and Girls Club and a pool.
Well, I guess the major thing is, right, what I'm trying to figure out, I mean, and that is a good area because it is one of the historically impoverished areas within Henderson. But was that the only area that you guys looked at? I mean, and how did the families respond to getting a free tree in an broken down yard?
Tori Jackson again for the record. We had really good feedback in terms of just having a great community event and talking to the people and the residents one-on-one as they were standing in line waiting to get their trees. But it really is an opportunity to connect on that one-on-one level when we do these tree giveaways. As was mentioned before, with just providing the information directly to the residents, we have that one-on-one conversation as city staff, and then the volunteers that are there that are certified arborists have that one-on-one conversation with our community members. And they shared with us that they had, concerns related to irrigation or related to where to plant it on their property. And we were able to go and individually talk with them and share the information with them so that they could find the place on their individual properties that made the most sense for them to plant their trees and ensure that they had survivability. And so it was really just that one-on-one connection to provide them with that direct education that helped hopefully ensure that those trees will survive into the future.
Thank you for that. So it sounds like the movement of this particular piece of legislation or the threat of that legislation or other legislation encourage cities to then do action in 2025. That's how I'm taking it.
Tori Jackson again for the record. And I think that, yes, it has enhanced what we were doing, but we were already doing a lot of this. And I think that we all experience extreme heat every day. So these initiatives that are really close to our heart when it comes to going out to the community and connecting with them and making sure that they are protected and they have resources is something that we've been doing for years, but we will continue doing with and beyond AB 96.
Nice. So hopefully let me know when you pick another poor neighborhood that's around that area. That's off of Boulder Highway. I think it's by the, it's not a Dollar Tree, but it's a dollar store where potentially you go in the parking lot and you may get robbed. All right, thanks.
Members, any additional questions? Assemblymember Wynn, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to follow up back on what Senator New just asked in terms of what you were saying, the frequency of those campaigns. I wanted to find out how often are they being run? Like, I know you said you did a door knocking program. Is it done every season, done on a certain part of the year, or that's what's a one-time thing?
Tori Jackson for the record. The events that we have really depend on the situation. A lot of them are funding driven. So if we find opportunities where there's partner organizations that have donations or want to do a tree giveaway, that's what has really driven a lot of the tree giveaways and tree plantings that we've done. We've partnered with some private organizations like Cox Communication to do some tree plantings in one of our parks where we planted 50 trees in our O'Callahan Park last year. We also have worked with Impact NV in terms of nonprofits on trying to identify additional locations across the city. And so that's our goal and our strategy for 2026 is to work closely with Impact NV and identify those high heat neighborhoods that are eligible for the funding that they have available through their federal funding and funding from SNWA so that we can, again, find the neighborhoods that need them the most and make sure that that aligns with the events that we're planning in the future.
So if I was a member of the public just to look into each of the, focus area, can I do that on our website right now through City of Henderson, whether it's Park and Recs, or I don't know where this information would be located at?
Tori Jackson for the record. Right now there's information in terms of high vulnerable heat areas, like through that RTC map from 2022. We don't have a specific map yet identified for the strategy of where we're going to be having these events, but that is one of the actions from that draft All in Henderson Sustainability and Climate Action Plan is to create a tree and shade strategy for the city. And so hopefully as part of that strategy, we will have a map that will show where those locations will be and where those potential tree giveaways or tree plantings in specific public right-of-ways will be.
Could you give us up to date on that, if you keep us in the loop, not just the member of the committee, but I think all members of the legislature would love to hear the good effort that you're doing in Henderson, and so that we can compare you to the rest of the cities that may or may not be doing it.
Tori Jackson, and absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any additional questions here in Las Vegas? Seeing none, how about on Zoom? I see them saying no. Thank you both again, and there may be an additional question that pops up towards the end of the presentation. Thank you again. And next, we'll invite our folk from the city of North Las Vegas. Good afternoon and welcome.
Well, good afternoon, Chair Flores and members of the committee. My name is Doug Guild. I am the Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of North Las Vegas. And joining me is our Municipal Forester, Eddie Rodriguez. So I appreciate the opportunity to join our regional partners to discuss one of the most pressing challenges facing our community, extreme heat. Alongside our partner agencies, North Las Vegas is actively developing heat mitigation policies that will be incorporated in the city's upcoming comprehensive plan and supports Assembly Bill 96. Over the past decade, 5 of the hottest summers ever recorded in the Las Vegas Valley have occurred, including 2024, the hottest summer on record. The hottest day ever recorded in Las Vegas reached 120 degrees on July 7th, 2024. This is not a future issue. It is a current and growing reality, and it requires intentional, sustained action. In North Las Vegas, our approach to heat mitigation is focused on practical and measurable strategies, starting with tree canopy and shade. Shade is one of the most effective tools we have to reduce ambient temperatures, combat the urban heat island effect, and improve quality of life. Today, we maintain a public tree inventory of 14,760 trees across our parks, trails, and open spaces. And we just got this information about 2 months ago, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Over the past 3 years, we have planted 1,800 heat-tolerant trees, and we have established a goal of planting at least 600 additional trees per year moving forward. In total, we are committed to planting 5,000 new trees by Earth Day 2032, a significant step toward expanding shade and cooling our city. We are also engaging our residents directly through our tree giveaway program. Here's 2 pictures related to our tree giveaway program. Over the past 3 years, we have hosted 4 tree giveaway events, distributing 400 trees to residents for planting in their own yards and neighborhoods. As part of this effort, we collect addresses and zip code data to better understand where trees are being planted. And that first picture there on the left is a map showing where all the trees have been planted that we gave away at one of our tree giveaway events. So you can see it's not just North Las Vegas, it is valley-wide. The different colors represent the different tree species. And to follow up on an earlier question, these trees are followed up with Nevada Plants, and the Desert Research Institute does follow up to see the condition of the trees. And the people, when they receive a tree, they put the address down and acknowledge that someone will follow up with the condition. So it's not just we give the tree away and we're done with it. There is follow up. And we do that through our community partners, Nevada Plants and Desert Research Institute. We've seen participation from across the region, including residents outside North Las Vegas, which demonstrates strong community interest and a shared commitment to expanding shade canopy and reducing the urban heat island effect valley-wide. These efforts not only increase canopy coverage, but also build community ownership and awareness around heat mitigation and sustainability. In addition, we provide cooling relief through 4 cooling centers in North Las Vegas at 3 of our recreation centers and the Alexander Library, offering safe, air-conditioned spaces and water for residents during extreme heat events. These centers are critical resources, particularly for the vulnerable populations, and represent an essential part of our public health response. Finally, our strategy prioritizes the right trees for the right environment. We focus on drought-tolerant and heat-resilient species that can thrive in Southern Nevada's climate while maximizing shade and minimizing water use. Planting heat-tolerant trees is essential to ensure long-term survival, allowing trees to reach maturity and deliver the full benefit of canopy coverage. This ensures that our investments are both sustainable and impactful over time. In closing, Extreme heat is one of the most significant challenges facing Southern Nevada, but it is also one where we can make meaningful progress through collaboration with our partners and investment. In North Las Vegas, we are taking a proactive approach, expanding our tree canopy, partnering with residents, and providing critical cooling resources. These efforts are directly aimed at reducing the urban heat island effect and improving the health, safety, and livability of our community. And we look forward to continuing to work with our regional partners to advance these solutions. Thank you very much. And I did want to mention in this, if you could go back one time, the second picture there was a picture of one of our tree giveaways. I think it was Liberty Park. And we've given away 400 trees. So those are two really good slides that represent what we're trying to do in North Las Vegas. Thank you.
And thank you for the presentation. And members, at this time, we'll open it up for questions. Senator Neal, please.
Thanks, Chair. So when did you say you started the process of the tree planting?
The tree giveaways we've started 3 years ago, and our goal is to do them every quarter. We're not quite there yet, but we've done them for the past 3 years.
So it's my understanding you guys, I guess, hired your first municipal forester. And at the time, I thought that was September 2025. So he was quoted as saying that North Las Vegas only had a 3% canopy cover. So if you started 4 years ago, have you been measuring your progress around that? Because what does the 3% number represent? The 3% represents how much you have gained since 4 years ago. And that is what the impact of 700 or 1,000 trees a year is?
Right. I'll let our municipal forester answer that. Go ahead, Eddie.
Eddie Rodriguez, municipal forester. Thank you, Senator, for the question. Actually, I started around 3 years ago. That 3% was from a canopy study that I believe was done in 2022, that number. The number actually has gone down a little bit to 2.2% canopy cover. When they hired me on to the city, we had a grant through the U.S. Forestry Service, and which allowed us to do another canopy study. That's how we found out that we were now 2.2% of canopy cover. We just received that data just literally within the last month. We just received our first inventory about 2 weeks ago. We actually are now just getting to look at it. So that grant that we got through the U.S. Forestry Service has given us, has allowed us to do a canopy study, tree inventory, and we're currently working on a master plan, urban forest master plan, which is slated to be finished in about the month of November of this year. So we do have a number of 14,760 trees. We are looking to increase our canopy cover, and we're looking to do it with heat tolerant trees. There is a difference between drought tolerant and heat tolerant. What we're finding out is that trees, drought tolerant plants and trees are exceeding their evolutionary period. So we kind of had to throw out the book and kind of start over, because there have been climate studies saying that from the year 2022 to the year 2050, they are predicting that we're going to increase our temperatures by 7 to 9 degrees. We have to figure out, how do we get our trees to live under those extreme heat environments? They're saying that we might have more than 100 days over 100 degrees in the summertime and might have temperatures as high as Death Valley. So our understanding, we started looking at it, and because of the limited amount of resources that are out there for us, we had to look at something that was going to work. And so we started looking at trees that were able to withstand extreme heat temperatures. And we did some of that with partnering up with City of Las Vegas. And you had a question earlier, did they share that with us? Their tree keeper, they did. Their forester there, Brad Dassler, I did meet with them. We did get the Davy Resource Institute to help us get the same identical plan and inventory as City of Las Vegas. I do believe that there was a push to try to get other cities to do the tree keeper so that we were all in alignment. I don't know that ever happened, but we just did, and I did share it with Clark County, with a lead tree person there named Louis Haddad, and I believe they are now looking to do a tree keeper as well there.
Thank you, Chair, for the follow-up. So this is what I heard. You learned a couple of lessons that you were planting the wrong tree, that when you quoted at 3%, you actually found out a month ago that you actually have less canopy, 2.2%. And that triggered the adjustment to do drought resistant versus a heat resistant tree, or a combination of both, maybe. So let me ask you this, because that's what I heard. Am I kind of correct on what I heard, or how I'm like interpreting that back before I have another question?
Eddie Rodriguez, Municipal Forester. Yes, that's correct. But when we started our planting, we did start with heat tolerant trees. We started looking at what trees were going to function more normally under extreme heat, because the ones that were out there, we started to see a few years ago, trees dying throughout the valley, and we said, those are not working. We've got to try something else. And so we started looking at trees that perform better under extreme heat, and so that's what we did. And so I would say yes, pretty much.
Okay. So based on what you just said, you learned this on your own, not via other cities, or you learned that there was a certain type of tree you should plant because of your discussions with the City of Las Vegas?
Working with partners out there, such as the Desert Research Institute. There are some studies out of Cal Poly, Pomona, San Luis Obispo, that are looking at trees that perform better under heat. Looking at those things is how we started to also take that information and start to look at it. And there was some collaboration by talking to the forester from other cities like Las Vegas. What is working for you all? What do you see that's performing well? And that's kind of how it started. Yes.
Great. So do you guys still currently have the grant, or is the grant over?
We do have the grant. It was taken from us, or put on hold. Put on hold for about a year. We just got it back online, which allowed us to just finish our tree inventory as of 2 weeks ago. And this will become a way that we will track our trees. One of the reports that we're trying to put into it is to be able to track the trees that we do give away. And we do plan to do quarterly tree giveaways. We like tree giveaways. And one of the reasons why is because it actually asks for an investment on the homeowner's part, for them to actually come out, stand in line, sometimes two to 3 hours waiting in line. And we believe just that little bit of investment to stand there, be educated, and wait for a tree makes that investment work more. And I think we saw that with some of we understand they're just dots on the map, but the Desert Research Institute is going back with Nevada plants to look at, to see if these trees are being successful out there.
So when does the grant end? How much was it?
It was $1 million. It does end this year. And because it was on hold for about a year, we may not be able to see, we may not see the rest of it. We might just have enough to finish our urban forest management plan, and the rest of it was supposed to be used for tree planting. We're trying right now to use as much as we can. It's difficult there's a lot of rules and regulations as to where and how and different things to plant the trees, but we're doing the best we can right now to do that.
So money's going to run out. What's the backup plan? And if you could put on the record, why was the grant taken away for you?
The backup plan is as a continued effort and work.
And I apologize to interrupt you. If I could just have you state your name for the record after each question, please.
Eddie Rodriguez, Municipal Forester. The backup plan is to continue to work with our community partners, such as Impact Nevada, Nevada plants, and we're kind of really at their whim. Like if they can get the funding, then we can continue to do these giveaways and tree planting. That is our backup plan. I might defer to Doug as to maybe why we had that money pulled back for a minute or hold.
Doug Guile, North Las Vegas. Yeah, that was part of the ARPA funding that was initially given out to agencies throughout the country and then was placed on hold. And then our initial request and award was $1 million, but it was reduced to, was it 500,000? So we have not received the other $500,000 yet.
And final question, Chair.
Please.
So, not to beat a dead horse, an old one that passed away, but during the legislative session, I had a bill that was trying to basically build formalize this collaborative around heat mitigation and tree planting and the science around it, and also wanting to tap into the redevelopment dollars in order to pay for the activity. And then I was met with a lot of opposition from the cities and the county in order for that to even exist. So now you're in a position where you have no money and you're going to have to rely on partners, and there is no conversation with, I guess, general fund, maybe even you guys have running through the city 3% of your cannabis money that comes from fees. I mean, is there no conversation on what other buckets you can tap into in order to do the actual act that this particular bill that did pass is telling you to do, or just generally what you believe your vision is to your residents to reduce heat mitigation? Because it sounds like you have the heart to do it. You want to do it, but you don't want to pay for it. Or, well, let me not say that. You want to put any of your general fund up or any silo in your general fund to pay for it. You're looking for another grant?
Doug Guile, City of North Las Vegas. We do have a commitment from our city council and our city management for funding some of the tree operations through our park maintenance general fund and through tax override. So there is a limited funding available for us to plant more trees and maintain them.
Tax override. What specific tax override?
That's the 268 fund.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes.
Good to know. So that means that there's no reason for me to bring back a bill that mandates 1% of the RDA go towards planting trees because we're going to find the money somewhere else.
There's always, Doug Guile, I'm hopeful there's opportunities going forward for more funding.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Assemblymember Nguyen, please.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if this was asked, and I came late, so I apologize if this was asked already. I know we had slides in here that talks about cooling centers, and I know that everybody's mentioned trees since I came in, so everyone's talking about trees. In terms of the cool building, public cooling spaces, has folks asked about the hours of operations on this yet, Chair? I don't think, no, not yet, right? So I think my question is that I think we had a strange heat wave this last couple of weeks, and then I was noticing the hours on these cooling centers that it's business hours. But you know, and I know that heat doesn't have business hours, right? They don't come out at 8 and they close at 5. Sometimes the heat piece is, heat goes out through the entire day. Have we talked about where we are in terms of extending these coverage to be longer as, the day goes longer in the summertime? Obviously, closing a cooling center at 5 would be, defeating the purpose.
Yeah, Doug Guile, North Las Vegas. That's a really good point. At this time, North Las Vegas the cooling centers are operated during normal business hours, but it's certainly the discussion we can have moving forward. I don't know what the other agencies are doing.
Follow-up, Chair.
Please.
Yeah, and I would curious to know that too. We're not just you, North Las Vegas, but the rest of the municipality that's in this conversation, because as we are addressing these long-term strategy with trees, I know that the immediate needs is still there, right? And we have a population growth in terms of lots of folks are coming into Nevada, not realizing the heat until they experience it, right? And of course, these limitation in hours. Also, the myth of folks coming from out of town is like, hey, Vegas is a 24-hour city, right? But no, not everything's open 24 hours. So in terms of addressing some of these priorities outside of trees, I'm just not hearing other, kind of solutions for right now. Like, what are we doing right now? Because tree takes a little bit of time, right, for it to mature and grow. How can we, outside of adjusting the hours, look at other ways for us to do things just much more on a proactive basis versus reactive?
Yeah, Doug Guile, that's really a good point, and we certainly can work with the other partners, the other agencies on that. That's a really good point, sir.
And Chair, if I may, if any other cities have any other things that they want to add to this, please come to the table.
The record, Tori Jackson, City Henderson. Regionally, we've been working really closely with DRI. They have a heat group that is a working group across Southern Nevada that works together to talk about things around heat. Last summer, the Desert Research Institute did a cooling center study specifically. They went to cooling centers across Southern Nevada. Most of them that were responsive were our libraries. And they put together a report that had recommendations based on the surveys that they did. So that's a report that if you're interested, we can provide to you.
Follow-up, Chair.
Please do.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure that we understand this. So there is a regional conversation about cooling hours regionally. And then what are the findings in terms of the extended hours? Do you have that offhand? I mean, you don't, it's fine. I can always look at it, but I just want to see if there is already public response out there and say, hey, you know what? We need to make sure that these cooling centers are open all the way until sunset and not closes at 5 p.m.
Tori Jackson, for the record. That is a conversation that we've been having as part of that larger DRI-driven heat working group. We also have a working group through our All-in-Clark County Regional Climate Collaborative that is specific to heat mitigation. And in that group, we've been having a lot of conversations around heat governance in general and the opportunities to potentially pursue things like a heat office that could help drive these conversations region-wide and make those decisions. In terms of the specific report that DRI did last summer, I'm unsure if there's specific recommendations in there around the hours, but it is part of that conversation. We've looked at other examples and case studies from other regions like Phoenix and other places where they use a diverse version of cooling centers besides just using them in their public spaces. They work with nonprofits, they work with faith-based organizations to try to extend those hours. So that's definitely been something that's been part of our overall regional conversation, is how can we engage some of those other external partners so that we can open up more cooling centers, but it's just an ongoing conversation that we've been having over the last few years.
And I know you mentioned earlier that you work with nonprofit partners on the tree giveaways and things like that. So there are existing partners in place in terms of nonprofit, but I guess the conversation about adding them to the whole cooling system has not happened yet.
Tori Jackson, for the record. That is correct. We've had partners, like for Henderson specifically, we partner with Salvation Army for our homeless response team. And so that is one of those nonprofit faith-based organizations that we've explored as an option that we could potentially have. And I think that that's something that is a similar conversation that's going on across the region in terms of trying to just identify who those partners could be and establish those relationships now. As far as I know, we do not currently have any cooling centers that are operated explicitly or at least widely publicized as part of our cooling center outreach that are in faith-based or nonprofit organizations. They are just those local jurisdictions of North Las Vegas, Clark County, Las Vegas, Henderson, and then our library partners.
And last follow-up, Chair, I just want to ensure that I understand how often these conversations are happening, because I know we have a lot going on, and I want to make sure that we keep up to this and not just every time we get back to Carson, we're like, yeah, it's February, it's freezing outside. Let's not talk about that right now. But I think once we get back here and understand and remember, oh yeah, it's 200 degrees outside, we need to do something about it, then it's too late. How often are these conversations are happening from you all as this heat mitigation group? Does it happen monthly?
Tori Jackson, for the record. With our All in Clark County Regional Climate Collaboratives Heat Working Group, that group meets on a monthly basis. That group started convening in, I think, fall of last year, so it's been a relatively short term, but they meet on a monthly basis and discuss this overall heat governance strategy for the region. The DRI's heat lab, those are pretty ad hoc in terms of the meeting cadence, but we do meet a lot more once the summer is on the horizon, and then over the summer, the cadence is a lot more reoccurring.
Yeah, I appreciate the information. I will follow up with all the cities, of course, offline. I know where to find you all, and I know there's another gentleman coming up to add on to it, but thank you for the flexibility, Chair, and I would love to take it offline to make sure that we get a chance to participate in some of the discussion offline as well. So thank you.
Marco Vallada, City of Las Vegas. For the record, Mr. Chair, through you to Assembly member, just briefly, the answer is that it does vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction and facility to facility, but for City of Las Vegas, the Homeless Resources Center or the Courtyard, that's 24/7. Some of our other community centers are open as late as 9 p.m., depending on time of the year, and for a cooling center or something like that, yes, they'll be open.
Chair, if I may. And
Please.
Is that 9 p.m. only to just a certain center and not all of the centers?
That for that particular one, yes. Marco Vallada, for the record.
I see. Awesome. Thank you.
And next we'll go to Assembly Member Flanagan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I think my question goes back to North Las Vegas. Thank you. I wanted to make sure I heard correctly. The 3% canopy coverage was back in 2023, and now there's less canopy coverage in terms of the trees, even with the giveaways. You also talked a little bit about starting to want to put in place a master plan that looks at how the city does this. And I'm wondering how, I don't know, I won't call it a siloed effort, but the work to look at where to plant trees or how to have the canopy ties into the overall city plan, because there's been a lot of growth and development in North Las Vegas. So with that growth and development, to have less, is that because consideration wasn't being given as the planning was happening? While the growth is good, you see some warehouses that are like next to residential neighborhoods. So how do you plan to have proper heat mitigation when you put a warehouse next to someone's neighborhood, next to the street, next to the restaurant? Like, how does that help me understand?
Eddie Rodriguez, Municipal Forester. It was 2022 is when the 3% canopy number was discovered when they did a canopy assessment across southern Nevada. We just did ours recently, another canopy study, which revealed we had a 2.2%. This is when we started to realize when we were seeing trees failing across the valley, what was going on, what was happening when we began to look into different studies about heat tolerance. This is really no longer a desert here. This is what they call an urbanized desert. We have surfaces, metal, pavement, glass, and things like that that make this urban heat island. What urban heat island is rising temperatures. Those temperatures are going to continue to rise. So that is why we started looking into the heat tolerant type of trees. And in collaboration with talking with other foresters throughout the city as to what's working and what's not. As far as the buildings or those white buildings that you see out there, I came here in about 3 years ago. Well, this was already occurring before I got here, but I can tell you that all of our planting efforts have been and looked at in the hottest areas using like the RTC mapping and census blocks. Our grant requires us not only to do that, but so does our partners and the people that we work with to get trees. In order to achieve tree equity, we would have to plant about 55,000 trees to do that. That would only put us at about an 8% canopy cover. We have limited spacing within the city's green spaces. We could probably plant about another 20,000 trees. The other 35,000 would have to come in our residential arena. And that is why we also at the same time started looking at doing tree giveaways to try to get trees into our residential arena. At the same time, trying to work on putting trees in our green spaces. I don't know in the future what the plan is, but I do know that we have talked about it, me and my director, about how maybe we could go back and look at some of those areas with all those big buildings to see if we can find ways to put more trees on those properties. But right now, our focus with our resources that we have are to get them to to where they're in most need. In our disadvantaged or our underserved areas, where primarily in those areas, they are seniors and children. And we not only have a responsibility to cool the environment, but we also have a responsibility to clean the air. And that is why we focus on heat tolerant trees, because they create more leaf surface, giving us more carbon sequestration and cooling our environment.
This is Doug Guile, North Las Vegas. Assemblymember Flanagan, great question. We've actually driven by these warehouses and commercial centers, and you're right. There's a lot of white warehouses, big white, and they reflect the heat, which adds to the heat island. Our tree giveaway projects have primarily been downtown area, the older neighborhoods. That's where the tree desert is. The new areas of North Las Vegas are part of the development code is to plant trees on new residential areas and commercial properties. We are working on, we have started, and we're still new at this. This is still a new process for North Las Vegas, but my goal is to work with our land development team, and part of the development process for the larger warehouse areas is to plant more trees. They're there now, but there's probably not enough, but that's really a good point.
So, Mr. Chair. quick follow-up.
Please.
So just to get on the record, if it's possible, what you're saying to me is the work you're going to do against the work of the Planning Commission or the overall strategic plan is going forward and maybe even retroly effective to try to do something that works to mitigate the heat as the city looks at planning, because you're right. These big, huge white warehouses that are mostly empty are just reflecting heat and next to people's homes. And how do you blend for a better future if you don't think about it when you're planning? Like thinking of one thing without the other is not productive.
On via Zoom, do we have anybody wishing to join the conversation? I see them saying no. We'll go back to Senator Neal.
Thank you, Chair. So just follow up on what Assemblywoman Flanagan was discussing for the warehousing. So if the legislature put in statute that it is mandated that any planning that goes through master plan must have a heat mitigation plan related to a commercial developer being approved, would you guys object?
Doug Dial, I want to hold back on that. I don't want to commit publicly to that right now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Senator Neal threw it out there and everybody's like, well, wait a minute. Thank you again. Members, before we lose our folk, any questions for them or did it trigger any ideas for any other jurisdiction? Assembly member. Oh, please, I did not intend to cut you off. My apologies.
Quite all right, Chair. Thank you for the question and to Assemblymember Wynn's question. And I should have mentioned earlier when I briefly mentioned the cooling stations partnership that we have internally with our social services department, Parks and Recreation, who operate our community centers. I know that we continue to study the issue of the, as you mentioned, the business hours, the hours that those are currently open and operating as cooling centers. And I know that's a priority moving forward. As some of my colleagues said, that's a regional discussion. So I just wanted to answer that for you. But as I said earlier, we're stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you again. Members, last chance to get any last minute questions on the record. Seeing none, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And again, I do appreciate all y'all coming in. I understand that not all the plans have been fully executed and we're exactly where we wanted to be. So I do appreciate all of you coming in. With that, we will then move on to our next item on the agenda. I do see our members of law enforcement here. Thank you for being here today. If you'd like to please come forward. And whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm Assistant Sheriff Dory Korn of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Name is spelled D-O-R-I-K-O-R-E-N. I oversee our Homeland Security and Investigative Services divisions. We received several questions or a series of questions regarding our use of technologies to combat crime, as well as the use of donations to amplify police services. Happy to cover any of those questions, but I'd like to open it up with a little bit of context so that way some of the explanations that I give later might make a little bit more sense. Sheriff Kevin McMahill, who oversees the agency, took office about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, actually. And there were three key goals that have come up and have been consistent now for several years. One was to get crime down to historic lows. Two was to build authentic partnerships across our community in every aspect possible. And then three, to improve officer and employee wellness. The roadmap that he gave our agency and that we've been following now for several years was one, injecting humanity into everything we do. And that's something that's built into our culture now. Building an employee wellness program that's second to none.
and then creating a culture where we take crime personally. And I'd like to explain what that means, which is, historically, law enforcement professions would be a little cold and look at crime from a statistical perspective only. The statistics tell a story, but more important than the statistics, as the sheriff has pointed out, is each person that's involved in a crime and victimized is a person. They have a family that's affected, and for each one of our officers to understand that when they're responding to, whether it's a vehicle theft, a robbery, a homicide, to treat it as if it's their own family member that's been victimized. And then the fourth piece was to make LVMPD the most technologically advanced police department in the country. And the reason for that was efficiency and effectiveness, efficiency in terms of saving money and trying to be more efficient in how we apply police services, effectiveness in terms of actually being successful to reduce crime, which we'll explain a little later, but also to look at it from an officer safety perspective, because the better information that a police officer has when they're responding to a call, particularly a violent call, the more effective they can be in preventing officer-involved shootings when they're not necessary, or doing other things that help the community more. And ultimately also trying to address some of the over-policing challenges that the police profession have been dealing with for generations, which is trying to use technology to be more precise in dealing with criminals rather than just widely policing an area. Now, just briefly, I will say that we've been very fortunate that in partnership with the community, many of you in the elected community as well, we've had a lot of success in the last few years. Year-to-year reductions in homicides. We're now 3 years in a row. This last year alone, a 21% reduction in homicides. Those are murders. Those are people that are alive today and family members that get to have their loved ones with them. Also a reduction in just about every other crime category, from aggravated assaults to robberies to motor vehicle thefts and so many other categories that now means less victims in Clark County. Our officer-involved shootings have reached a historic low ending last year. The year before, we had 17 officer-involved shootings. Last year, we ended with 7. It's a 58%, almost 59% reduction in officer-involved shootings, which does play a role in terms of the technology we'll talk about shortly. The culture of wellness is something that I think we lead the nation on right now. And the reason why Sheriff Kevin McMahill pushed so hard for that is because if we take good care of our cops, better care of our cops, they will take better care of the community. And we're seeing that that's true. So we have healthier cops, both mentally and physically, and they are taking better care of our community. We're very fortunate that in the police profession, we would see suicides every year. We're 2 years in a row without suicides. And ultimately, there is, I don't believe, a sentiment study or anything that can say this, officially, but I can tell you that the response we've gotten from our community members, the ones that are interacting with our officers day to day, and those that are interacting with our executive staff, like myself, are showing support for what's happening, support for the crime reductions, support for how the police has evolved, particularly in the last few years. With that said, I will tell you very passionately, and I believe this firmly myself, I know the sheriff also believes this, and it is part of our agency as well, which is that is only half the equation. Fighting crime, preventing terrorism, that's half of it. But ensuring transparency, protecting privacy, civil rights, civil liberties, I feel very passionate about, and I know the sheriff and the agency does too. There's always room to improve. There are always things that we need to change and adjust to. But I can tell you that every use of our technology, as well as what we've done in policing in general, is we are striving very hard to be as transparent as possible while still maintaining that balance of fighting crime, but also ensuring that privacy, civil rights, civil liberties aren't an afterthought when we develop a new program, that they're equal to the effort that they're designed to do. So with that, Chair, I'd open it up to any. I know that you had, or the committee had a series of questions. Happy to answer any of those questions or any other questions you may have in terms of those topics, and particularly the technology and the donations that were raised.
Thank you. We'll start with Vice Chair Considine, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that information. I think there's some really good news in there. I've had a lot of constituents who have been sending me questions. There's been a lot of things in the media that have been talked about for the past 5 or 6 months. So I do have a couple of those specific questions, and they start with, I know there was the donation of vehicles. I know there's the donation of drones. So I'm talking about like property items that have been donated, and a couple of questions on those. When those items are donated, is there some sort of a written agreement that, delineates whether who owns it, how long, is there cost or subscription fees involved in those? Is there paid training by the donor, or what's the cost to the public for the training for using those donated items and the maintenance upkeep? And then also when that time period for the donations, like for example, maybe the cars are donated for life, but if maybe the drones are donated, but then there are subscription costs to keep them going, or maintenance or any of that, if that does exist, are those donated for the life of the products, or what is being paid in the public? And I know there's a lot of that, but I think that was how they were written. If you could answer those. Thank you.
No problem. Dory Corn, LVMPD for the record. Chair Flores and Assembly Member Constantine, correct? I just want to make sure I say that correctly.
Considine, but that's okay.
Okay, Constantine, sorry. I'll answer in general the donations, and then I'll try to, hopefully I won't miss some of the questions you had in there, and if so, please just redirect them and I'll address each one of them. But the idea of donations to amplify police services is something that we've been doing for a long time, and a lot of other police agencies do it. And the answers are nuanced because it depends on what type of donations we're talking about. So to share some perspective, in short, we have very strict policies on how our members are able to facilitate donations, and it requires that a bureau commander, which is a pretty high level in our organization, is the only one authorized to discuss donations with a community member who's interested in donating to amplify some aspect of police services. Ultimately, there are some processes and documents, and ultimately it falls on the sheriff to decide whether to accept those donations that do something for the police department. But they are facilitated by independent nonprofit organizations. So for example, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Foundation, the LVMPD Foundation, while it has the name LVMPD and we have a very close association and connection to them, they are not an independent nonprofit with their board and their mechanisms. Same with something like Behind the Blue or the Injured Police Officers Fund or any other type of nonprofit that might receive donations from a community member, and then that community member is interested in supporting the cause of public safety, for example. But it's also important to remember that our donations range for something as simple as an individual community member who might want to donate $500 to pay for an ice cream truck at a community event that the police is hosting to bridge the gap between the police and the community, for example, or to pay for T-shirts or furniture, for example, that's needed for maybe a family that was victimized. So there's very small donations all the way up to large donations that include everything from purchasing a vehicle for the police department or several vehicles, or purchasing a canine dog, for example, or a building. So like if you go to the very extreme, we built the Joint Emergency Training Institute that was recently opened. This was a product after 1 October. One of the lessons we learned was we needed better training to, one, de-escalate police situations that can prevent officer-involved shootings, but two, be better prepared to respond to mass shootings, mass casualties like 1 October. That was a $35 million donation, $35 million series of donations, but ultimately a $35 million project that was all privately funded to build that facility and the training associated to it. So those donations, very large scale in that case, but whatever the project is, whether it's drones, cyber trucks, buildings, or small things, what we see is that we have everything from the Vegas Golden Knights to UFC to MGM to Cirque du Soleil to a variety of entities, businesses, to a variety of business leaders and their personal foundations, as well as individual members in the community who are donating money for various purposes of law enforcement. Now, in terms of, let's say, a specific technology project or something like the cyber trucks, to answer some of your questions, we have an agreement, generally speaking, depending on what product we're buying. So if it's a software service, there's essentially a contract that says how long the contract is good for, how long the software service is paid for. We're under no obligation to continue that service beyond what is paid for through the donation. Some of those donations, if not most of them, will cover any of the maintenance and other auxiliary costs associated with that period of performance. And in some cases, it may not. So for example, with the cyber trucks, the replacement of tires at some point within the life of the vehicle will need to be absorbed by us. And that might be, let's say, $1,200 approximately, let's say, to buy those tires. But the vehicle was $233,000. So for us, we have a choice to make. When it reaches the point of needing new tires, Do we pay 0.5% of the cost of the vehicle, which is about that, let's say $1,500 to buy those tires, or do we decide to put it out of service because we don't have the funds to support it? Now, in other situations, if it's a software or a technology or a building or anything that we purchased through donated funds, if it reaches the point where the subscription ends, the money that was available through the donor ends, if we decide that it is very valuable and an effective tool, then we can present it to our city and county as part of our budget request to continue the use of that technology. But there are also times where technology evolves very rapidly, and we may decide that this is no longer a good tool. It was paid for 3 years, but now that we're on the 4th year, we don't want to continue because we rather look at something else, for example. So it really depends on which donation and what type of donation we're referring to. But generally speaking, we do try to ensure that there are proper documentation, both internally within LVMPD, as well as documentation with whatever foundation is supporting that donation. And then ultimately policies in place for how we receive something like that. I hope that answered most of the questions, but I'm happy to go into more detail.
Yes, thank you. That was I appreciate the overview. I hope that answers a lot of folks' questions. So I guess just to kind of drill down and get a little bit more specific. So I appreciate your example of the cyber trucks. And I'm also thinking, and I understand, okay, we get the cyber trucks, they're fully donated. We need to do some maintenance, things like that. But let's go to, say, maybe the drones on those. I don't know if there's training, you have to get training to drive the cyber trucks, but I think for the drones and things like that, you have to do training. For that type of training, for the items that will be paid out of the LVMPD budget that are not pre-considered because you didn't know about the donation. So now you're getting these things donated. I guess what I'm trying to figure out in here is for the training, for the time that now you've got these new drones, you've got these trainings, maybe the subscription's paid for, but now you have staff that's specifically learning how to work that and specifically working on the drones. That they're not donating that staff's salary money. So where does that pool of money that comes sort of hand in hand with some items that are donated, especially technology, where does that budgeted money come from?
Dory Cornell, VMPD for the record. So ultimately, if it's personnel, like let's say a police officer. So with the drones, for example, we have a donor that paid for a certain amount of drones and a lot of the infrastructure, if not almost all of the infrastructure associated with that product. But ultimately, there is still a personnel cost, let's say a police officer that now is flying that drone. That is still part of our normal budget process. So in other words, a police officer that's driving a Tesla Cybertruck, or a police officer that's using a donated canine dog, or a police officer that's flying a drone, the police officer, their salary, their benefits is still part of our budget. Usually, as far as I know, the donor is not paying for salary benefits. I don't know of any of that currently, at least. And it's a much harder thing to do to try to have a donor pay for salary and benefits because unlike the technology that we can decide to no longer use, or maybe we can no longer afford, what we don't want to do is have to lay off people or fire people if we no longer have funds from a donor. The only caveat I will say is with grant funds, like Urban Area Security Initiative, UASI grant funds, there have been some very limited cases where a grant pays for a person's pay and benefits. But we limit that for the same reason. We don't want, when the grant runs out, to have a situation where you can no longer keep that employee. But that is not related to donations.
May I ask another follow-up? Thank you.
Please.
And thank you for that. So I guess what you're saying, and if I'm wrong, please let me know, is that there are no new staff members or staff that have been removed from one area to work in a new area, like cameras we didn't have before or drones we didn't have before. They're still the same folks doing the same work. They're not separated into another area. I'm just trying to figure out, I know if you understand what I'm trying to ask is somebody provides you, 24 drones. There's no new staff that's learning that. And there's no staff members or officers that are being taken off of previous work to run those drones.
Dory Corn, LVMPD for the record. No, so I may have misunderstood what you were saying. Now I think I do understand specifically. There are new personnel we hire. For example, we may hire more drone pilots, or we have hired more drone pilots, for example, which we submit through the county and city budget to say that we need this personnel. But everything is taken into consideration about what is the most efficient approach to the police service. So, for example, if we have a unit called Fusion Watch that operates a lot of these technologies. They have everything from the public safety cameras that we've talked about in the past to the gunshot detection sensors that we launched in 2017 to now drones. So that unit is absorbing additional technologies. So in some cases, it's the same personnel, to your point, that are still just now using other technologies. But in other cases, it is personnel that were maybe previously assigned to a different assignment that are now moved into that unit because now we have more work for them to do, or we are hiring more personnel to use those technologies. But it is all designed to be more efficient. So the general concept, what we've seen with technology is sometimes one person behind a keyboard can be more effective than, let's say, 3 officers in the field. And so we are able to basically be more efficient with technology rather than just having more cops all the time. And we can prioritize what the police officers really needed to do in the field rather than having police officers do work that's not really related to police services. Please.
Thank you. And then sort of along the same lines, I know you mentioned the foundation. So if items are donated through a foundation, but there is like a subscription service or a training service, where is the agreement? Like, is there anything in writing and who signs those, and are those available for transparency purposes for the legislature, for the public to review?
Dory Corn, LVMPD for the record. The short answer is yes. If we are buying a subscription or a technology or having to go into a contract with, let's say, a particular vendor, there's an agreement, either a memorandum of understanding between us and them or an actual sales or contract that we are agreeing that we are using this technology for 3 years based on the payment from the foundation, for example. So yes, there are, and they are public records. So ultimately, a public records request should be able to receive it, and I'm sure our intergovernmental affairs office can also help coordinate providing whatever contracts or agreements have been made.
Please.
Thank you. And then in any of those agreements, does that delineate how data is shared or who owns data, or is it, delineates whether that data only stays with Metro?
Dory Corn, LVMPD for the record. The short answer is yes. I will, before I expand on that though, I would go back and say on the agreements, it depends on the donation. So like as I was saying earlier, if someone, a perfect example of a donation that is very powerful for the community, but wouldn't have an agreement, for example, is in 2023, you'll probably remember there was a very violent carjacking spree where multiple people were killed, but ultimately a father that has 7 children was killed. And the murder happened in the vehicle. The mother's left not only without her husband, but the kids without the father, but they also didn't have their transportation. So that's an area where the police officers involved in that case work with a donor in the community and the LVMPD Foundation, and they were able to purchase a Sprinter van for the family, for example. In that case, we don't have an agreement or a contract per se, because we just received that donation through the donor and the foundation and gave it to the family essentially. So I just wanted to be clear for the record that it's not for every donation, but to your point, I believe, if I understood correctly, when it comes to, let's say, the police department, receiving donated funds for 10 cyber trucks or a fleet of drones or a product service that has some kind of subscription, there are contracts and agreements with those. And yes, that can be received. I apologize. I answered yes to the most recent question, but can you just remind me that second part?
Now I'm going to have to go back to.
So, I'm sorry.
But I appreciate this, and I think the curiosity that a lot of these questions are coming from are not from the sort of one-time donations. It's for the donations that I think build relationships or have connections over a longer time. So that's more of what I was asking about. And now I don't remember what the other piece was. I will defer to see if anyone has any other questions before, unless you remember it now.
I do remember. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. About data retention, or not data retention, but who owns the data? Sorry, Dory Corn, LVMPD for the record. Yes, the answer is that in those contracts or agreements, we do list who owns what data. Sometimes like let's say, for example, there's a technology that we start off with a memorandum of understanding, and there are some data that the vendor owns, and there's some data we own. But in the most cases, we clarify that it's our data, we own it. And regardless if it's anything that we have possession of, we follow our data retention policies and our privacy policies to make sure that we're doing everything appropriately.
Just because that response, so I guess a two question. Is the vendor the same thing as either the donor who donates directly or the donor who donates to the foundation? And then the second question is, if there are things that are donated that have data where the vendor or the donor keeps that data, does that have a monetary donation amount to it?
Dory Cornell, the MPD for the record. No, it doesn't have a monetary value. We have language that we provide in our contracts and that we share with whatever vendor we're working with that does not allow them to, let's say, sell our data or use our data in any way that without written permission from us, without consultation from us, which we don't provide. For us, we have a lot of restrictions because we're required to be CJIS compliant, which is the criminal justice information systems, basically. So in order to be compliant with that, there are a lot of restrictions on how they can connect into our systems and then the data we can control to make sure we protect it. So the short answer is no, the donor themselves is separated. So we don't have a situation where the donor has access to the data. Normally it's the donor providing funds for a software program that a company has, whether it's, say, Microsoft, Motorola, Skydio, any of these companies. And then we have an agreement with those companies on data ownership, retention, and everything else.
And thank you for that. I do know we have a representative from Washoe County, and I know that they're joining us from Carson City. Based on the exchange, would you be comfortable just kind of engaging on through your lens as to the questions asked by our vice chair?
Hi, everyone. Joe Colcurcio, Washoe County Sheriff's Office, COLA, CUR, CIO. So working with and listening to the questions, my answers are going to be almost exactly similar with the undersheriff down there and with that. So if you guys have any other further questions or would like clarity on anything, I can speak to those as well. And I completely agree with everything. We do something extremely similar up here in Washoe County. We have a 501c3 that we partner with. It's the Washoe County Honorary Deputy Association. And just like that last question you asked, it simply is put that way of donations are sent through that 501c3, and then if there's data or anything that they are looking for, it's completely separate, and it is usually just a straight donation, and that donation is made to the honoraries, and then the agreement is made between the agency and whatever company it is, and that data is usually CJIS compliant or NCIC compliant, which is state and federally mandated and has all those rules with it.
And thank you for that. Appreciate you joining us. We do have a slightly different question from Senator New.
Thank you, Chair. I was just trying to follow this conversation, and I think the thing that I'm missing is that I thought that some of this conversation was coming up because, number one, there was a news story, right, around a Metro agreement with a private corporation, and that there was camera readers, and there was an issue around, number one, disclosure of that information and the transparency around that information, and that there was an agreement, specifically Flock, where in that agreement, they say that they have basically it's like there's exact language in the agreement that says that any materials, that there's agency confidential information, that any material, data, system, and procedures, information of or with respect to the agency is not to be accessible or known to the general public, right? So I thought that that particular provision in that agreement is what kind of created these questions around if Metro has a contract, or whether if you received a donation from a private entity that then has that kind of language in their agreement, then what then is the transparency around that data? Because technically that agreement says they own the data and it's confidential.
Dory Corn, LVMPD for the record. May I go direct to the Senator, Chair? Thank you. Senator Neal, I appreciate the question. So I believe I'm not too familiar with the media story. I do know a little bit about what you're talking about in terms of the Flock MOU that was signed by us, where there is language that I think ultimately creates confusion on who owns the data. I can tell you that the memorandum of understanding that was signed there was originally when we partnered with Flock before we had our own Flock ALPR systems. So there is some nuance in terms of when you partner with a company, they have some of their data, whether it's analytics associated to the system. But I can tell you that once we've evolved and we have our own Flock ALPR cameras, the contract we have states that we own the data when it comes to our ALPR data, and they do not. So we can follow up in more detail between the MOU versus the information we have that indicates we are owners of our own data and that they don't have it. And then the transparency is we are making progress and more efforts to show even more transparency, particularly when it comes to the automated license plate reader data and the auditing and how we operate. So for example, I think something that was likely generated, I believe, by Chair Flores and maybe some other members of this committee could be you, Senator Neal, too. I don't know exactly who, but I know the sheriff said he had some conversations with members of this committee to include the chair about the transparency portal that the city has and that he would take it back to the team and look at it and see what we can do. I can tell you that thanks to your efforts, we are doing a transparency portal with Flock that will be just like the cities that will show that same kind of data that the city is sharing. So that is in the works, and it's just a matter of them publishing it, which should be pretty quickly here. So there's good efforts there with transparency. And I will also say when we talk about particularly the concerns on Flock ALPR or any of our other automated license plate readers, not just Flock, the policies and procedures we have, not just for transparency, but for training, auditing, and misuse are pretty robust. We ensure that every single person who has access to the system is trained and that the way that they share the data or use the data is audited. And we do that biannually.
And the audit is public.
Dory Corn, LVMPD for the record. I don't understand which part of the audit. So no, we don't, I guess, publish a report on the audit. We have our supervisors that work in the tech ops section. They will conduct a biannual audit just like they do, let's say, on any of our other systems, and to make sure that there's no misuse. If they identify misuse, then they refer that to internal affairs for any kind of misuse. I don't believe there have been any reported incidents of misuse, but that is something we can look into and report back.
Okay. So I also want to get at it was alluded to, and I was just listening to your examples when you were talking to Vice Chair Considine about, you know, how you guys engage in certain contracts or relationships with private entities because, you know, you may or may not have the funding or X, Y, and Z. So I just want to, I guess I want to get into that a little bit because what was the reason why you're engaging in so many different, I guess, I don't know how many private contracts you guys do have. Maybe that should be my first question. How many actual private contracts do you have that are similar to like the Flock scenario that showed up in the paper?
Dory Corn, LVMPD for the record. I don't have the specific number. We can get that and research it, but I can tell you that from my perspective, there are essentially three funding sources. One is our budget, which comes from the county and the city. It is very limited and it primarily covers police positions. And there's very little room for any other type of equipment, certainly technology, if it's innovative, or any things that are like the basic essentials of a police officer. So the vast majority of the budget covers personnel and salary, and then the rest of it covers the basics of a police vehicle and some of the equipment like body-worn cameras and some key components there. What's left, and I don't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but it is very, very tiny of what's left that we can use to try to enhance our services. The other two mechanisms we have to try to find additional funding to become the best police department for this community. One is federal grant funds, so like the Homeland Security, urban area initiatives, and those grants and other types of grants from the Department of Justice. That's how we end up buying different technologies, including drones, including automated license plate readers, including CSI technologies like cameras. And then the third is the philanthropic route, which basically is private donations through one of those nonprofit entities. That happens by not just the LVMPD Foundation, but also, let's say, Behind the Blue or other types of foundations. And that has been a way that we are able to fund things that we would normally never be able to fund. So, for example, with drones in particular, we're very proud right now to have probably the largest and most advanced drone program in the country. And the reason why, and that would not have been possible without the philanthropy of basically community members and business owners that really care about public safety. That's one of their priorities. They want to donate money to enhance public safety. They've expressed publicly and to others that they've left communities where they think that public safety was degraded because of lack of funding and other reasons that ultimately became unsafe for them and their families, and that they feel like their money that they're able to donate should go to public safety and I'm sure some other causes that they have. So because of that, they're able to allow us to get some more advanced drones that normally we would not be able to afford with our budget. But why that matters to us, to the sheriff, these technologies we're seeing helps us with saving lives. So the reductions in homicides play a direct role, and other crimes that we're able to reduce. But I'll give you just more like something that touches me a little bit, a human story for me of, for example, automated license plate readers. There are plenty of case studies I can show you, or stats or data or examples where we've caught a homicide suspect, caught a sexual assault suspect, robbery suspect, Amber Alerts, different things that we use. But it's one that's interesting is just a couple of years ago, there was a robbery spree that happened and the suspects were using firearms. They went into 2 subways about 30 minutes apart. They were robbing not just the business, but also the patrons and people in the business. One of the individuals that gets robbed, this lady, they steal her necklace that has a little dog pendant on it. It is a family heirloom. Her grandmother passed it down. It was past generations, and she was distraught. And we used automated license plate readers to be able to catch the suspects fast enough to be able to recover that, which normally in the past would never have happened. We were able to recover that and get that piece of jewelry back to her. In the past, with just enough time to get away with a crime, or even if you can't get away with a crime and you get prosecuted or caught later, usually what you stole is discarded or lost. So there are ways that we're really fighting crime that really are providing a new type of service to the community. And I think that a lot of these donors, to Senator, to your question, a lot of these donors are coming forward and trying to provide funding to be able to do those kind of things that we can't afford to do with our budgets.
So thank you for that. And I don't think anyone on this committee does not understand the value of public safety and the value of being able to reduce crime or go after folks that have committed a crime. But where I thought this conversation was going was, what is the balance between public safety, public trust, transparency, access to records, and what is confidential and what's not confidential, and how we are somehow shielding information away from citizens that folks may feel they have a right to see, or at least participate in some kind of public discourse around the creation of an agreement that may impact the liberties of citizens in Las Vegas, right? And so that's where I thought this conversation was going. And that's kind of like where I'm trying to, I guess, get a sense of what is the opinion around, true transparency and real access for citizens to feel that, yes, crime fighting is going on, but also my liberty interests are also being deeply protected at the same time, right? Because they are not exclusive of each other. They should be operating at the same time.
Dory Cornell, VP for the record. Senator Neal, I couldn't agree with you more. That's why I was saying that privacy, civil rights, civil liberties cannot be an afterthought. They have to happen. They have to coexist at the same time, from the beginning of a project all the way to the end of a project. I can tell you specifically regarding the the criticism regarding Flock automated license plate reader technology, for example. I believe that it's a misperception that it is in secret or hidden. And I'll tell you why. For us, we started our unit Fusion Watch in 2017, nearly 10 years ago. I was very involved in that project. And ultimately, when we opened the doors for that project, we brought in the media, we brought in the Clark County DA's office, we brought in our public defenders, we brought in privacy advocates, and we shared with them the public safety cameras we were using, the ALPR systems we were using, as well as gunshot detection sensors we were using. We were very transparent in terms of just opening the doors, and that still exists today with drones. And what's been built today is it's an open invitation to anyone on this committee, let alone anyone else who wants to come see what we're doing. But more importantly, to your question, Senator, about ensuring that there's a specific way for the public to engage in that conversation if there's any concerns regarding their civil liberties. I would say it was roughly July 24, 2017 at Fiscal Affairs Committee is the first time that we went and purchased what was called Vigilant Solutions, which has since been bought by Motorola. It is automated license plate reader technology. In 2017, that was presented to Fiscal Affairs. At that time, it was run by Bill Macbeth and Commissioner Steve Sisolak, Commissioner Larry Bound, Councilman Stravis Anthony, and Councilman Ricky Barlow. That was the first time that we presented that, and obviously the opportunity for public comment. And at that time, I don't believe anyone took that opportunity, but it wasn't in secret, it wasn't in hidden. They're different vendor we're talking about today in terms of Flock, but the same type of technology. More importantly, then in April of 2022, there was a second time where now we were using grant funds to purchase about over $200,000 of Vigilant Solutions ALPR. We did that then, and again, it was presented to Fiscal Affairs. There was public comment at that time. It wasn't specific to ALPR technologies, but we had made it very clear from 2017 through those dates and then on to today that we are using this technology, and we hadn't received any formal challenge on using those technologies. What more recently is being talked about is a different vendor that we're using, but for the same type of technology.
Final. So, and then just one final follow-up, just shifting a little bit to go back to, I mean, clearly we're in a public forum where, we as legislators get a chance to ask questions in a public space that our constituents may want to know, and then they don't have a way, right, to ask that question because maybe they're just sitting in their living room and saying, I read that story and I have thoughts about X. So just to go back to that story, like, I guess whoever this officer was that decided that they would, share their viewpoint on the surveillance and the misuse and that how it had been used in other places where there were the cited examples of, tracking former wives and tracking girlfriends and going after people that that really is private or potentially harassment. What is your opinion about that? I mean, because we wouldn't know about that until the back end. The question is, if that happened and a Metro officer did that to a spouse or a girlfriend or the other way around, somebody's boyfriend, would we even know about that? How would that even be handled and dealt with? Because it really is an invasion of someone's privacy. And I'm just wondering, like, how would that become publicly known to us if that happened?
Lori Cornell, the MPD for the record. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate the question. And certainly if people have those fears, we want to address them. So thank you for the opportunity to do so. I will tell you that the police are empowered quite a bit by the public, not just to have access to systems, but in terms of our actions, whether we arrest someone or cite someone that could have a serious impact on their lives. It's a lot of empowerment that happens, and there's a lot of responsibility. There is abuse that happens. There's no doubt. We've seen it across the country. We've even seen it in Clark County with our agency as well. But what I would tell you is the concerns specifically to, let's say, Flock ALPR aren't isolated to just that system. Our officers have access to more sensitive systems to include criminal history, to include warrants, to include a variety of other databases that they can access if they wanted to abuse those systems to research a family member, a neighbor, an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, or something like that. And so we have the practices and the policies and procedures in place to protect against it. Does it happen? Yes. Are those people held accountable? Absolutely. Some people lose their jobs, particularly when they violate something very serious like accessing a criminal justice system inappropriately. The way that's done, generally speaking, is there are auditing logs that basically allow us to do random sampling of checks to see, is anyone abusing the system? Are they searching something they shouldn't be searching? And then sometimes, because again, it's difficult to know about every single entry, there are sometimes complaints where someone does file a complaint with Internal Affairs, you do an investigation, and you find out that a police officer or some police personnel abused the system and used it inappropriately. But the measures are in place to try to fight against that, and we're doing a lot to try to be as safe as we possibly can with all of these systems, particularly with the new technologies. We have a lot of training, a lot of good policies, and then auditing, and then discipline that comes with abuse. Abuse can happen from a public safety camera. If someone uses the camera to look at something they're not supposed to, that happens, there's supervisors in place that hold that person accountable.
Can I just ask one more?
Please.
So I just have one more question, since, you brought up that, the process, citizen files a complaint, goes through IA, but what happens, because at the end of the IA investigation is the citizen doesn't actually know what happened, right? They don't actually know Officer X was disciplined or what happened. That it actually remains confidential. So how do we balance that, right? Because that's come up a lot in my district, particularly, probably in everybody else's, where you try to walk them through the process, right? There is a process in place in order for a citizen to file a complaint with Metro against an officer if they believe something improper happened. However, right, officers do their due diligence of checking and investigating, but the actual citizen does not actually know the outcome. There is no outcome written saying such and such happened and X was disciplined. That has been a common statement that has popped up, I think, over the past year, for me particularly, and also through, I know for a fact, through NAACP when complaints have come through the Legal Redress Committee. And so how do we deal with that? Because the facts are, yes, there's a process in place, but there is a vacuum at the end of it that says, oh yeah, but I can't tell you what happened.
Dory Cornell, VPD for the records. Senator, I believe that there is, depending on who's filing the complaint, there is communication that closes the loop at the end with that person that's filing the specific complaint. Now, it may be limited, but there is some communication that is designed to close the loop. There also is a second mechanism, which is the Citizen Review Board, an independent entity that's charged, I think, by the county or the state to look at the issues you have. So if a citizen has a complaint about how an internal affairs investigation was completed or not, or what the end result was, they have an avenue to reach out to the CRB independently, and then the CRB has the ability to reach out to our internal affairs and receive more information and try to resolve that issue. As I said earlier, I mean, there's definitely a strong, well-intended effort to try to be as transparent as possible. There are some limitations sometimes when it comes to technologies, because we also want to make sure you're not so transparent to the point where criminals now continue to victimize other people because they know they're under investigation. But there is a lot of effort to try to combat that.
So, Chair, I kind of opened this door, but I kind of want to close it too. So, not to completely go off the rail, but just to kind of deal with, I guess, the line of questioning that I was in around, this balance, right? In all things, we should seek balance, right? Between protecting officers, right? Which clearly, the statutory protections in place, right? Where an officer, has certain rights. But then there's also the other side where when we talk about the Citizens Review Board, I mean, historically, it's been around for long enough for us to understand its weaknesses and its flaws, right? And it's also been around long enough where there have been attempts to try to strengthen the weaknesses and flaws within it to create a balance between citizens' rights and police rights. There has been a deep reluctance to engage in that work because politically, folks don't want to piss off the police, right? But I really want to open that door to try to have that conversation about what what truly could be the right balance of citizen protection, police protection, to actually strengthen the Citizens Review Board so that it actually has the value that it was intended to do, right? Because I don't think it's met that standard for citizens. It's been around. It's also been heavily criticized, but it's not one that folks openly take on as a fight, because on the other side of that are the police in which you're fighting, I don't know a single politician who wants to get in a fight with Metro. Not interested, right? But they do want to have a conversation around how to have that fine balance to represent the citizens that come to them with an issue, and to deal with that in a way that is not hostile, that is not saying, oh my God, you don't respect us because you're challenging the system. Because that is generally the interpretation. If we're asked to take on something like that, we're reluctant to do it because we don't want to engage in that level of battle with individuals on the other side who we want to respect but can't seem to have a dialogue on this transparency issue.
Dory Cornell, VP for the record. Senator, I appreciate you bringing that up. I will tell you that, at least from my perspective, and I know the sheriff shares this as well, we don't want any citizen, not even one, let alone several, who feel like they're worried about going to battle with Metro, or that they're afraid of pushing an issue that they feel like they need more insight or involvement, but they don't want to do it because it's going against the police, and that maybe is a bad look now or not, or maybe they feel like it's a problem for them. That's not good. That's not healthy for our community. That's not healthy for our crime fighting efforts. So what I would be foolish to try to answer your question specifically on what we can do now in this room to fix that. But I can tell you that we will take that back. I will talk to our teams, our intergovernmental affairs. I would like to come back or at least provide some information through our teams on what actually happens through the life of the internal affairs case and what information is released at the end. I feel like we've made some improvements there, but I don't have the info to talk about it right now to tell you for sure. So, and then if not, or if it's not enough improvement, then this is the perfect segue to start that conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Please, Vice Chair, please.
So thank you very much. Thank both of you for coming up and answering all these questions. And I'm going to go back to like the big donor things with the subscriptions and the things. And I think there's a tension here that this is what I wanted to ask about. You stated earlier that we can take these donations, we can use these items at the end of the donation period or the subscription period where they're paying for it or they're covering it. We can stop doing it if we don't want to do it anymore. But then when you were speaking with the senator, you mentioned the truth that these are incredibly strong new forms of policing and keeping track of things that we cannot afford to do on our own. So I think the tension is we have all these things that are given to us to help us do better that we can't afford. And if it is pulled by a donor, that's a tension there, and it's kind of maybe an uncomfortable dependence. And I'm wondering if that's where a lot of some of these questions that I received come from, is what is the relationship there if we lose something that you've shown and are very confident that makes a difference, but we as a state right now, or as a county, because I'm not sure if other counties have all of these same donations or not, what we do then?
Dory Cornell, VPD for the record. Thank you for the question. I will tell you, we haven't run into that problem yet. So what we've seen so far is the technology changes rapidly. We don't usually, in fact, I don't believe we have any technologies or products or agreements that are very short term. In other words, we get something that is really, really good that's paid for, but then now we really want to keep it and we can't afford it. Usually we're getting deals with the donors. They're willing to pay for 2 years, 3 years, usually 4 or 5 years of that product, which is enough time for us not only to get a lot of value for public safety, but then the technology evolves so rapidly that by the end of that lifespan, there may be a new product entirely anyways that we want to go to. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however we want to look at it, is more theoretical right now. In other words, we haven't run into a problem where we had a budget constraint or a dependence on a technology that we felt the donation ran out and we needed to keep it. that day will come at some point. I venture to say that the technology will evolve so much that either the donor will be interested in, or other donors will be interested in continuing to provide private funds to help, or the technology will change and we will decide that we don't need it. Or the third option is we will reach that point that you're referring to, where we would have to come back to the county and city and say that we gained a benefit for 5 years, but it has been so instrumental and so valuable, we'd like to request funds from the budget or from a grant to continue it, and then we'd have to cross that road at that time. But it hasn't happened yet, and we're trying to put some measures in place not to have a dependency. These are all extra tools that amplify our resources. They're not things like personnel that we would have to then fire.
Members, any additional questions? Seeing none. For our folk on Zoom, any questions? I see them saying no. Thank you again for joining us today and allowing us to engage in this conversation. Obviously, thank you to all our members of law enforcement for the work that they do. I'm sure that there may be folk that may reach out, likely through the Captain Martinez, but I'm sure if any questions come up, they'll be reaching out directly to you. Thank you again for the work.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee.
With that, we will move on to our last item on the agenda, which is public comment. For those of you wishing to participate in public comment.
Excuse me, Chair. Sheriff?
Yes.
Before you go to public comment, could I have a minute to make a comment and then ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Okay. You know, I've attended 3 of these meetings and I've gained a lot of information and knowledge from them. But it appears to me that so far the only thing we've heard is programs, problems, or issues from 2 of the 17 counties in the state. Is there a method or process for including the other 15 counties in some of their issues?
I very much appreciate that. We did, in fact, for today's conversation, invite some of our other jurisdictions, and unfortunately, they said that they were not available. So we are now asking that they come back next meeting so that we can hear directly from them. And then if there's any other specific jurisdictions that you would like to hear from on any particular issue, if you want to just shoot us an email, and or if you want to just go ahead and say it on the record now, and then I'll work with our team to get them an invite. Just for clarity, members, the makeup of these hearings are twofold. One is we are following up on some of the work that was done during the regular session, special maybe, and then we're continuing that work here. And then second is just requests by members. So absolutely, so whatever you want to do there, Assembly Member, let me know if you want to put it on the record, you want to shoot an email, and then we'll extend an invite and then be very specific about the subject matter you want to address.
Well, I appreciate that, Chair. I was unaware of the process and how we got to where we get stuff on the agenda. So I appreciate it, and I will talk with some of my local jurisdictions in that I represent 5 different counties in the state, and they have issues too. And so I thought maybe I'd learn the process, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'd love to have them, and hopefully we can make it work for the next two meetings.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Excuse me, Senator Krasner, was there anything that you wanted to throw on here? Understood. And with that, we'll go ahead and start public comment either in Carson City or Las Vegas. If you could please come forward and please occupy one of the empty seats. And for those of you following along, we will be going to the phones immediately after the folk who are physically present in Las Vegas or Carson City.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores and members of the committee. My name is Hector Ariola, and I'm the Policy Fellow with the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition, and we are here to advocate for equitable urban tree canopies, improving cooling center access, and prioritizing energy burdens in the Public Utility Commission of Nevada's decision-making. As you heard in today's presentation, extreme heat is dangerous and deadly. The heat is not felt equally. Neighborhoods like the historic West Side, East Las Vegas, Spring Valley, and Paradise suffer more severe urban heat islands, and that is not by accident. That is our state legacy of decades of disinvestment in these communities. These residents face higher health risks and struggle with rising energy costs or broken AC repairs. For them, Shaded sidewalks are not a luxury. They're a lifeline to work, medical appointments, and groceries. Shaded sidewalks also enable recreation, like wealthier areas such as Summerlin. In our listening sessions, residents said cooling centers are not meeting the moment. We agree with Assemblymember Nguyen that we need 24-hour cooling centers. Extreme heat does not stop overnight. These centers must also have qualified medical staff, not just librarians or community center employees who are not trained to handle heat stress emergencies. We've also heard families face a devastating choice when their AC breaks down, which is leaving their pets behind in dangerously hot homes because cooling centers don't allow them. Pets are family, and we need pet-friendly cooling centers. For far too long, shade has been treated as a luxury, but it is critical infrastructure. We need our local government's commitment to equitable heat mitigation, and we ask for your support to see that come to be carried out. Finally, affordable electricity bills are key to staying safe. Rising energy costs hit urban heat island communities harder. The Public Utility Commission of Nevada isn't effectively factoring energy burden into rates. We respectfully request that the committee accept presentations at the future meetings on solutions to make the public utility of Nevada more accessible and accountable. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. I don't see anybody else, or we do. Yeah, please feel free to occupy all the seats. Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Tommy Love. I'm a registered nurse and co-founder of the People's Medic. It's a nonprofit here in Nevada, and we are dedicated to people, the environment, and education. And I am here to speak about two connected issues: the trees that were cut down at the federal building and the heat illnesses that we witnessed at Saturday's No Kings protest as a direct result. The organizers that planned the event and the People's Medic came prepared regarding heat, hydration, medical care, and safety. But days before the event, the giant, healthy, mature, beautiful, thriving trees were cut down. Trees that provided shade, trees that have stood there for years, cooling the ground and protecting people, myself included, from the direct sun rays. And it makes absolutely no sense that they were cut down. This is not just an environmental loss, it's a public health failure. And at the protest, we saw more heat illnesses than expected. 2 cases were critically severe and required emergency hospital transportation. Thankfully, the People's Medic and the organizers had many cooling measures because we were already concerned about the people ahead of time. But had those trees still been standing, that day would not have been so devastating, and maybe those 2 people would not have had to go to the hospital. As we know, heat illness is a crisis in Las Vegas, and it's getting worse. And the state cannot encourage tree planting while at the same time cutting them down. We're asking for your help in the future preventing this and better protecting Las Vegas residents and its visitors. And we at the People's Medic would love to work with you moving forward on any shade infrastructure and hydration stations for the public. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. And for those of you, if for whatever reason you go over the 2 minutes, or better said, need more than 2 minutes for public comment, please make sure you submit that in writing as well so we can upload it to the record. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Whoever wishes to go next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jasmine Lazaro. I am a nurse practitioner and one of the co-founders of the People's Medic. We were present during the historical No Kings 3 protest on March 28th, Saturday, at the Las Vegas Federal Courthouse as medical volunteers. On Saturday, we cared for 2 persons who suffered from heat stroke, which is a life-threatening condition. Furthermore, 11 people suffered from heat exhaustion, which is a milder form of heat stroke. To put this into context, the trees at the federal courthouse were cut down a few days before the protest. The same kind of protest happened last year in the summer and June at the same location and at the same time. And at the time, The trees were still there to provide shade for the people and cooling measures for the asphalt. The number of heat illnesses cases then does not even come close to the number of heat cases seen on Saturday. The healthy and beautiful trees were cut down, causing these staggering heat illnesses to occur. Studies show that asphalt with shade has temperatures of 110 degrees. And without the shade, it climbs to 140 degrees, making it lethal for not only children, the elderly, pets, but also for everyone in the vicinity. This is indeed a public health crisis brewing and is ongoing, and the People's Medic is more than willing to offer solutions to help mitigate this issue. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Aaron Harris, and I'm a volunteer with the Sierra Club. I want to thank Chair Flores and the rest of the committee for your great questions today when it comes to our urban tree canopy. I think one of the main issues that we really need to take a look at is not just the planting of new trees, but also maintaining our heritage trees as well. Even just by my house, when they were doing some of the conversion from grass to a xeriscaping, they removed about half a dozen 30-year-old trees. And as a result, you can see that ground surface temperatures in the area a quarter mile around where those trees were located have increased in temperature. And we need to look at not just protection of our public trees, but also trees on private property as well. When I go, if I want to change an outlet in my house, or I want to put up a fence, or if I'm a business and want to dump chemicals into the sewer, I need to go to the city for a permit. And we really need to consider that our trees are a public resource, even if they're located on private property. And so it makes sense for trees of a certain size, of a certain age, to go through that same process to make sure that there are not impacts to the surrounding neighbors as well as the city as a whole. So I want to thank you again for your interest in this matter, and really encourage us to not just invest in new trees, but also really protect the trees that are have been keeping us cool for the last several decades. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Anybody else wishing to come forward? I don't see anybody else in Carson City or Las Vegas. We will go to the phone line. Anybody wishing to join us for public comment via the phone?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you wish to provide public comment, please press *9.
Good afternoon, everyone. CYRUSHOJJATY. I wanted to talk about something that's kind of off topic, and I'd like to appreciate our legislatures that have introduced bills to limit the amount of home ownership that private equity, Wall Street, hedge funds can own in this state. It is one of the causes of the housing mess we have. I wish this bill was introduced more than 10 years ago. Although I want to make this clear, I don't think it is the main cause. Certainly the cost of land has an impact, permits have an impact, materials have an impact, but I believe the main cause in terms of trying to build and expand the supply of housing is labor, and that has to be addressed. Private equity has done a lot of damage in terms of monopolization and the financialization, all stemmed with Wall Street and the Federal Reserve regarding wages, job availability, quality of goods, in terms of service, prices, although I went to Smith's just now and the prices were pretty good on clearance. It has impacted our food supply. These few food chain companies, few companies produce most of the food supply to restaurants like Cisco. The list pretty much goes on. Heck, our main economic engine, the resorts, almost all of them are owned by private equity. This corporatization, in fact, is probably the main problem we have in this state in the last 3 decades. I wanted to address this at the Nevada Forum, the NGO that had a bipartisan effort to address the problems. Let me address one victim of private equity, Saks Fifth Avenue. They had a store here in Fashion Show since 1981. They bought up Neiman Marcus, inflated the debt, and now they're liquidating. And I don't believe e-commerce is the main reason why they're closing the store. It's going to leave a nasty scar on the strip. Who knows when that location is going to be replaced? That along with jobs and a lot of other issues that's coming along. I think these regulations on private equity should go in every aspect. Think about it. The malls in Mexico and the Philippines are not struggling as much. So do what you can and please get these zombies out of our economy. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. I'm confident that Senator Neal has been working on some of this work and possibly can work together on that. Thank you. Next caller wishing to join us for public comment, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Ellen Gifford. Thank you very much for the opportunity to make public comment. Nevada's governor signed 519 bills submitted to him by our legislators at the close of the 83rd legislative session. Approximately 114 of those laws became effective in May of 2025. Approximately 174 became effective in June of 2025, and approximately 175 became effective in July of 2025. Yet almost 1 year later, codification of these laws has not been completed. NRS 220100 states that the Legislative Council shall keep the material in the Nevada Revised Statutes and its annotations current. The common definition of the word current is the most recent. The Legislative Council bears the responsibility for ensuring the Nevada Revised Statutes reflect the most recent law. These laws mandate various aspects of the way Nevadans live, including the very important topics that were addressed in this meeting today. The content of these laws must be readily available should a citizen have the need to apply them in a personal or legal situation. Today's technology is abundant with systems that would accomplish this codification in just days, efficiently and properly serving the public. The Legislative Council is respectively requested to take responsibility for implementing an efficient process for codifying Nevada's laws as soon as possible. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller wishing to join us for public comment, please.
Chair, the public line is open and working. We have no additional callers at this time.
Thank you. And seeing nobody else coming forward, I want to say thank you to all of you and thank you again to our local Southern Nevada jurisdictions for joining us and our members of law enforcement. With that, members, we will be back here next month. Please look out for the email and the agenda that will be posted. And with that, this meeting's adjourned.